different from the way that you were talking to me a year ago, when you seem much more, I suppose, happy-go-lucky. And I don't know if you remember, but we bumped into David Trimble, the Conservative here, and this is what he said to us.
I have a 10-year-old, nearly 10, and a 6-year-old, so do you have any words of advice around that?
No. I mean, you know, let's realise yourself the straight and a lot of marriages break up here.
People keep telling me, my poor husband, he's been here with me this week, and everyone just keeps saying we're going to split up.
Well, no, it doesn't necessarily. You have to then actually sit down and think about what are we going to do. Now, what I did, my wife, who's a solicitor, came in and managed my office. That meant that we were in constant communication.
Well, it sounds like you actually took up that advice.
Yeah, for the period, I did take up that advice, mainly because I needed somebody I could trust at home to set it all up and manage all the issues. People don't realise that when you're a new MP setting up the offices, you have to put a lot of the financial outlay yourself, and then you may or may not get some of it back afterwards. And so I was having to hand over great wedges of my money. I'd rather have done that to my husband. However, I think that now that his sort of role in setting up the office and everything has been done, he has actually found it, especially since the sort of threats and hatred, he has found it incredibly difficult actually to be in such close proximity to some of that, and so I doubt it will be going on for very much longer.
Now, last year when we got all the new MPs, we were talking to you together and we discussed the workload, and you were quite dismissive of your Conservative colleague Johnny Mercer.
Contrary to what my Conservative colleague was saying, I actually think that being an MP is an easier job than the job I came out of doing, and it's not lots more work, and actually I saw my children considerably less over the last 2 years, having 2 jobs and running a campaign. Actually, I feel like I see them an awful lot more, so they are delighted, and they keep being a little bit like, why are you here, Mum? It's Sunday.
In fairness, Johnny was on the front line in Afghanistan, which I imagine is slightly harder than being an MP.
It should be a blinking doddle, it's just drinking coffee.
So do you think has being an MP been a doddle?
It has its moments. I still don't think that it is vastly different to running any sort of community organisation, or the only thing is that it never stops. It never, you don't get to leave work ever. Sometimes the way we talk about it excludes people from wanting to do it, and actually I think that we need many, many more different sorts of people doing it, and not to make out like it's in some way sort of sacred that no one could ever manage it, because lots and lots of people are managing it, although it isn't always just drinking coffee, alas.
And if you, looking back, if you could give yourself a piece of advice to that new MP last year, what would it be?
To be perfectly honest, I think that there are many things that I have said that have then caused some massive media storm and caused me heartache and pain for those people around me, those people who work for me. But I couldn't, in all honesty, say that I would tell myself to do it differently, because I think that I've got to commit to the idea of being myself, making mistakes and being okay with that. And so I don't think that if I had my time again, I would have done anything all that different.
Jess Phillips. You can listen to the original documentary New Wave at Westminster on the BBC iPlayer. Tomorrow I'll be talking to the multitasking Conservative MP, part-time shepherd and nurse Maria Caulfield to find out how she reacted to the junior doctor strike and the scrapping of bursaries for student nurses. It may not be an axis of evil, but it is a strategic alliance which will cause discomfort at the very least in the West. Russia is now using Iranian air bases to launch attacks in Syria for the first time in the conflict. These planes have already been engaged in the Syrian air campaign, but operating from bases in Russia, placing them in Iran dramatically reduces the duration of their missions. Moscow and Tehran are already allies in defence of President Assad, but does this move suggest a warming in relations between them? Shashak Joshi is a senior fellow at the Royal United Services Institute think tank. What do you make of this move? Hello, can Shashak Joshi hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello there.
Good afternoon, I'm sorry about that.
Don't worry, welcome to the programme. How unusual do you think it is for Russia to be using these air bases?
Well, it's historically exceptional. It's the first time I can see that any Russian forces have been overtly deployed on Iranian soil since the Azerbaijan crisis of 1946, so for nearly 70 years. Throughout the Cold War, the Islamic Republic was extremely skeptical of the Soviet Union. So this is a historically interesting development, not least because Iran is a country that has preferred to show its muscle in the region via covert means, using proxies, using intelligence operatives, not using bombers or fighters or overt military platforms. And it reinforces the kind of axis we have seen between Moscow and Tehran over Syria develop in the past 2 years since the growth of Islamic State and their joint effort to prop up President Assad.
And how might that alliance progress, do you think?
Well, they've obviously taken a hit in the past few weeks in Aleppo, where rebels have broken the siege by the Assad regime, and both Russian and Iranian forces are desperately helping President Assad shore up his northern city. So there's a lot at stake there, and this move obviously is partly a signal to say they are still committed to the Assad regime. But in the longer term, I think there's an enormous degree of mistrust. I think that the Iranians don't fully trust that the Russians won't strike a deal with the West over their heads, abandoning them, potentially to seek sanctions relief over Ukraine. And the Russians, I think, don't really trust Iranian objectives inside Syria, which they see as far more religious, far more sectarian, far more to do with Hezbollah rather than to do with stopping Western regime change. So I think there's a degree of mistrust. They don't really get each other. They aren't natural allies.